Today's guest on the Celtic Exchange has been described as the most important and influential historian in over 136 years of Celtic Football Club. He's written countless books on the club over the years, with some calling him the bridge between Willie Maley, Celtic's first ever manager, and today's wealth of Celtic writers and historians. Pat Woods, welcome to the Celtic Exchange. A lifetime of Celtic, a lifetime of writing. How did your connection to the club first come to be, Pat?
My first connection was when my father used to take me to games in the early 50s. That's where was my first connection. Because in the meantime, he used to tell me stories about Celtic, watching Celtic in the old days and that, I was fascinated by it, I was actually desperate to see Celtic.
Yeah, would you remember the first kind of teams that were playing? So Jimmy McGrory manager at the time, I suppose?
Jimmy McGrory's manager. It was the early 50s. He had players like Tully, Bobby Evans, Bobby Collins. Great players, But I mean, I was just fascinated to see Celtic. But I was fortunate enough I remember the first. I can't remember who they played. But I just remember it was early season, maybe being the opening game of the season. We went to Celtic Park and it was in the terracing, and just sort of love it. Beautiful sunny day, and Parkhead just looked. You see the teams coming out. I was thrilled by all that.
You mentioned Bobby Evans there.
Yes, he was my favourite player.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
To me, Bobby Evans always used to be seemed to be doing the work of six men.
Mm-hmm.
He was a terrific player.
I was looking into Bobby Evans. I don't know probably as much as I should do about Bobby Evans. He played for Celtic between 1946 and 1960. Mm-hmm. So bang in your early years as a Celtic supporter. He played in the 7-1 game, didn't he, of course, in 1957 League Cup final. And as it happens, and maybe I'm skipping ahead of myself here, Pat, but you ended up getting involved in the story of Bobby Evans. Bobby Evans, Celtic's forgotten man,
yes,
I believe was.
Yes.
Tell me why he was Celtic's forgotten man.
Well, of course, he left the club in very unfortunate circumstances. He wrote he did a series of articles about Celtic, critical of Celtic, and the Scottish Daily Express, and that was him, the end of his career. Was
he negative in the articles about the club or something?
Well, he made criticisms of the club, yeah. And so that was it.
That didn't go down too well.
Definitely did not, no.
No, so you've spoken early on there about your dad, James, your dad.
James.
And just how influential was he then? Obviously,
very
he's taking you along to your first game.
Yeah, just listening to him talking about Celtic was fascinating, Mm-hmm. I mean, I was desperate to see Celtic.
Would your dad have heroes of his own? So he's maybe grown up watching Celtic in the 30s and 40s.
Oh yeah, he does. When he was at, I always remember I was thrilled listening to his talk about the 1931 final, where Celtic were getting beat. I think it was getting beat 2-0, weren't they? They got back to draw 2 each, and Celtic won the replay quite comfortably. Mm-hmm. But his thing of being there and seeing everything that happened, and he was bang on. When I came to do my research, he was bang on.
Yeah. And these are back.
I remember him talking about, that there's quite a number of Motherwell fans were miners, came from a mining community, and they were saying there was no coverage, there was no broadcast of the game. And that it wasn't covered at all on the radio, bar a summary later on that evening or something like that, but there was no actual game. The game wasn't done, no good, wasn't covered, you couldn't listen to it. But they used to send back messages of the score by sending pigeons. And that's how also the local newspaper in Motherwell got to know about some of the things too. They got these pigeons taking back these wee reports of the game,
The old carrier pigeons doing their job back in the day.
It's fascinating. It's another world,
Yeah.
Another world.
And you're talking there, so refresh me or remind me, the 1931 final, what is that? Is that a League Cup final or a Scottish Cup final? Scottish Cup final, Celtic win it on a replay?
Won a replay quite comfortably, yeah.
But then, say, 20-ish years later, your dad's recalling the game verbatim, telling you exactly what happened and how it played out.
Listening to him talking about Celtic,
Brilliant.
It was a joy.
Yeah.
A joy listening to him,
And beyond your dad, your grandfather Patrick, obviously, again had a big influence on you. And I think you're talking about a special event around those same times, around about the 30s, where he came into close contact with the Celtic players.
Yeah, because he worked in the anchor line, the transatlantic liner, and he was on the ship that brought Celtic back from American tour in 1931.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was called the Transylvania, it was.
Okay.
And he was there. He witnessed Jimmy McGrory being taken off just before the boat came into Mobile, take him off the ship to go and get married in Donegal. He was marrying one of the Greens of the Greens Playhouse, and big family in Glasgow. They'd arranged it. So it wouldn't be no press intrusion. You know, if they'd developed it in Mobile, they might have been press harassing them and things like that. So they were keen just trying to get privately, get him off the ship, get him away to get married, you know.
Yeah. And in those times, Pat, in the 30s, we might touch on a fella we both know well, Matt Corr. Matt Corr has just recently written up 2 volumes actually about Celtic in the 30s.
Very good they are too, yeah.
And he describes it as a real time of triumph and tragedy for
Celtic.
Celtic.
Yes, it was, yes.
So many figures, Johnny Thompson, of course, Jimmy McGrory you've mentioned. Who would be those Celtic heroes at the time for the likes of your dad and your grandfather?
McGrory would be a big hero for all Celtic fans.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, Jimmy McGrory, I mean, incredible goal-scoring records, you know.
Yeah, I was looking up something.
And John Thompson, of course, the tragedy of John Thompson, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I was looking up something about Jimmy McGrory just in the last few days. 55 hat-tricks for Celtic, or 56, if you want to include the double hat-trick and an 8-1 win against Dunfermline. Yeah. He was incredible.
And a man who hardly talked about it.
Very
I mean, I once asked him, I did his scrapbooks from, and I tried to think of the secret. My son, his dad didn't care less how I scored. He said, I was just there to score goals. He couldn't see what the fuss was about.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm, you know what I mean?
Do you know?
Very, very modest man, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Incredible record he had. Jeez.
It's 550 goals, something like that.
Unbelievable record the man's got, you know? Yeah.
But I've spoken to a number of different guys here on the show over the last few years from a variety of Celtic angles. I don't know if I've spoken to any who's actually spent much time or any time with Jimmy McGrory, probably one of Celtic's all-time heroes. Tell us a bit about him. You were talking just briefly earlier on about just what a very decent guy he was, first and foremost.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he was a quiet man. You know, you talk to him, but I mean, he would never, I mean, it was a job to him in that respect. I mean, obviously, proud to be a Celtic player. But, you know, it wasn't a great man for publicity or anything like that. Mm-hmm. He was very modest man. He was unassuming.
Yeah. And did you spend a bit of time in his company over the years, as you say, you compared
some
of
I used to go there every second Wednesday afternoon. And, you know, it was good, and I'd work away, and I'd first of all, to sort out all of his stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's some really great stuff, you know, which I told Mrs. McGrory to put away, put them away in a bank or something like that, because he gets right. I always remember there was a particularly fine item, which was, you know, the captain's table. They do the thing with the captain's table, captain of guests for dinner, you know.
Yeah.
And they produced this thing for Celtic players, and it was a beautiful thing. It was the card had green and white and all sorts of colours, beautiful and Celtic, and it's a marvellous thing. Mm-hmm. I've never seen anything like it. I said to her, look, I said, get that stuff into, and I threw out some other stuff for her. I said, you must put these away, put them in a bank. I said, because it's worth an awful lot of money in years to come.
Yeah.
You know?
And do you know if those kind of items have been preserved, or is it?
I don't know. I couldn't tell you, but I know. I did tell her that, and I know that it's absolutely astonished by it. You know?
Yeah, and we'll get to your own collections later on in the piece, Pat, in terms of some of the really unique Celtic items that you've managed to preserve and compile over the years. Some of which you've been showing me this afternoon. You know, you've kept them personally. You know, for yourself. Some are at Celtic Park, some are at the Mitchell Library. And various other places, which is great to know. I hope Jimmy McGrory didn't ask you to keep his collection of hat-trick balls from the games, because you'd have little room for them.
Some,
Brilliant stuff. Moving on from Jimmy McGrory, but certainly speaking of that time, aside from that 7-1 League Cup final win in 1957 where Jimmy was the manager, Celtic are, it's fair to say, a pretty average side during your formative years.
Yeah, they had it, but see, the 50s were had a kind of golden age of Scottish football because it was a very competitive game then in Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, Clyde won the Scottish Cup twice in the 1950s. Hearts won the league twice. I think it was twice they won the league. Aberdeen won the league. You know, so I mean there was competition, and I mean I saw the famous five, the terrible trio, the Hearts team. You know, I mean, and because Rangers were always strong. I mean, very, very strong teams.
So what's that like for a Celtic mad youngster? You know, making his first appearances at Celtic Park to go and watch the games. How is that for you at that time?
Oh, I just loved it.
Yeah, win, lose or draw.
Yeah. You just like going, aye. Yeah.
So beyond that part, it's not really till 1965 that Jock Stein comes in. He becomes manager in March 1965, and that's when things really begin to change for Celtic. Everyone pinpoints the Scottish Cup final against Dunfermline that year.
Yeah, but I think what went through was, you see, I remember they played Rangers on New Year's Day 1965. They get beat by Rangers that day. Jimmy Johnson got sent off for doing Totty Beck, you know. Well, and Totty Beck. There's a terrible Beck was his real name. Everybody called him Totty Beck. And anyway, and Bobby Murdoch got a penalty and missed it. And this isn't anyway back in you could see people were the crowds were drifting away.
Mm-hmm.
They really were drifting away, and you feared for the club, you know, because you couldn't see anything happening, you know. I mean, I know Billy McNeil told me himself, he said, Celtic, if Jock's didn't come, I was away, you know.
So as I say there, it's early 65 then, so it's March of that year. Were the signs there early on, Pat, that Celtic were going to become a force under Stein, or was there a few bumps in the road?
His early games were, he did some good victories, but there were a couple of defeats in it. And I remember the guy doing it at Falkirk in one of the games. But the thing was that I think he was really just getting to know his players, getting to town, noticing things. And he got it bang on for the final. He got the team bang on for the final.
Yeah.
And I always think, when I think of that final, I always remember that the first goal, right? Charlie Gallagher hits this ball, hits the bar, and goes up to me. Instead of usually go behind the goal or the goalkeeper catches or somewhere it comes down, this one goes straight up, right up, and then come back down there, Bertie, Auld, the bundle, and then you say, how did that happen, you know? Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the final, the goal, and you're seeing, then Billy McNeil's winner, Charlie Gallagher. Charlie Gallagher scored two of the most important goals in Celtic's history. Not scored, he created two of the most important goals in Celtic's history. That one and the one against Vojvodina.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
you think about it, Charlie Gallagher. What? And a beautiful striker of the ball, Charlie. Beautiful striker of the
ball.
ball.
And also, you spoke about Jimmy McGrory's modesty. I believe Charlie Gallagher was very much the same.
Oh, aye.
Played down his contribution.
Smashing guy.
Yeah.
Marvellous guy, aye.
Another guy that played such an important part. As I say, 1965, that cup final, deemed, generally as the game that changed everything for Celtic.
Yeah, it did, yeah.
We could go in a number of directions here, Pat, in terms of this discussion here today, but why don't we just go straight to 67? We'll go to the final because it's a huge part of your life. It's a huge part of your own personal story. You're one of what must be very few people around that's been to all three of Celtic's European finals. You were there in 67, the win. You were there in 70 when we lost to Feyenoord. You were there in Seville when we lost to Porto in more recent times. But tell us about the build up to 67. How were Celtic faring as we got to the latter stages of that tournament? And did you believe that we could A, get to the final and B, actually win the thing?
Well, once they'd actually got to the final, you began to be overwhelmed because I thought, Vojvodina were I think they were the hardest to be beaten up, to be quite honest with you. they were strong teams. Bobby Murdoch told me, he said, he hated playing against Yugoslav players, you know.
Mm-hmm.
He said, they're so strong, so skillful, difficult to hit off. He said, they could give you a game, you know. But, you know, once you got to the final, you thought, well, chance of winning it. I know that Inter are going to be the favourites. But, you know, I was just so excited about going, you know. And I might not have gone because the fact of the matter was that because of the financing of it all, they're a bit worried about being able to get the money for it. And so I phoned up a friend of mine I worked in Woodside Library at the time, and he worked in Maryhill Library. He was also a big Celtic fan. And I said to him, Joe Hendry, his name was, and I said to him, so I told him about it. And he said to me, he says, look, he says, go. You go. He says, if you don't go, you might regret it. You bang on.
Yeah. Right on the money. What age are you then, Pat? A young man?
I was in, I'd be 46, about 46.
21, give or take?
21. I come up for my 21st birthday. Yeah.
A young man. And how does folks back home, how does everyone respond when you say, I'm going to make it happen, I'm going to go and planes, trains, automobiles, whatever it takes to get to Lisbon? Was there many other folks around you going at the time?
Well, not many people that any of my friends were going, you know. But I was determined to go after what Joe told me.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember, you know, previous Saturday, the 20th, I locked up Woodside Library because I was a sub-librarian, and it was by the turn I was in charge of the library that day, and I remember locking it up and then getting ready to go down, walking down to Charing Cross to get a train home and that, and oh God. And feelings I had, you know, both feelings are sort of excitement, but at the same time, a wee bit of apprehension, because I hadn't been south of Crewe. That's as far as I'd ever did that, and that'd only been when we used to go on holiday to Wales.
Right.
We used to change at Crewe. That's the furthest south I'd been.
Yeah.
I'd never been any further than that.
And now all of a sudden you're heading into mainland Europe.
Aye.
There's all sorts of really amazing pieces of memorabilia that you've shared with me this afternoon, Pat. And what we'll do is, for anyone who's watching right now on YouTube, we'll share some of the images on screen. There's your original match ticket for the game. There's your train ticket from London Euston. From London Victoria. London Victoria. Into Lisbon. There's various other train passes when you got there. There's a whole collection of photos. I thought I'd seen quite a lot of Lisbon photos. I've not even scratched the surface. You seem to have the rest of the full collection. There's some brilliant images, and again, you know, with your permission, as you were saying, Pat, I'll share some of them with some of your viewers and listeners. There's a picture here, Pat, which obviously means a lot. It's yourself and your friend Ian Campbell. I believe. Yes, aye. Tell us exactly where you are at this moment in time. That's in Estoril, where the Celtic team bus. Yeah, we went up there one afternoon to go and go to Estoril to sort of see him at the hotel, you know, just to maybe get autographs or something like that. We went up there, yeah. Did you manage to get a chat with any of the players or staff? No, I didn't. No. They weren't coming out at that particular, maybe having their lunch or something like that, I don't know. They were too busy preparing to win a European Cup. Yes, exactly, aye. Take us to match day. So I think Glasgow time, it's something like a 5:15 kick-off or a 5:30 kick-off back home. But what was your day like there? You spoke earlier about your excitement, but maybe apprehension about your travels. How are you feeling on the day of Celtic's biggest ever game? Well, I felt quite relaxed. I was there. I was actually there. I was actually glad to have got into, be booked into a B&B. Very good it was too. Nice family, just a modest B&B. And and we'd been around Lisbon, so I felt a bit more relaxed. I mean, I'd never been abroad before, as I said, and you know, I was enjoying the sun, you know, I was enjoying that, and so I felt a bit more relaxed, you know. When you get to the stadium, and obviously, you know, you're getting closer to kick-off. Yeah. I was going to ask you the question about the belief that Jock Stein gave, I suppose, both players and fans alike. Did you have confidence in your manager? Were you just there for the trip? Did you fully believe Celtic could win?
I thought they had a chance of winning, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought they had a chance. But I knew how strong a team Inter were, I knew they were a strong side,
Yeah, and Inter, previous winners.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
European Cup, Heleno Herrera, Catenaccio, that approach.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
So, your pal Jim Craig, he plays a part in the first goal, but unfortunately it's not for Celtic. Was it a penalty? You're there?
Well, yeah, Jim believes very strongly that, it wasn't a penalty. And I've seen other people saying, I know that both Puskas and Stefano were there.
Mm.
And they were interviewed after the game by I think it was an Italian newspaper, and both of them said it wasn't a penalty.
They said it wasn't?
Wasn't. Puskas and Di Stefano.
Where is VAR when you need it most?
Exactly.
Back in the day.
Yeah.
But you go 1-0 down.
Yeah.
And obviously the Catenaccio that I mentioned, that's the famous Italian style for taking a lead and then just defending it and seeing it out.
Yeah.
And it's not till the second half before Celtic get an equaliser and a foothold in the game.
Well, I was wondering, see, the thing was, around about the hour mark, I was worried because they'd all this pressure, and I was beginning to get worried. And I know people poo-poo that there's no joy, we're going to win, but I was getting worried when you got the pressure that they was exerted in that team, and, the shots and all that, and you've got a goalkeeper that's, you're just stopping everything, Yeah. And you begin to worry. And I know that, the newspaper I read when I got back that said that Billy McNeil and Tommy Billy McNeil and Tommy Gemmell were quoted in the paper as saying that they were worried too. Yeah.
If they're worried, you were right to be worried.
Aye, I was right.
You mentioned the Milan goalie. Is it Sarti?
Sarti, yes.
Having the game of his life.
Giuliano Sarti, yeah.
There's stats from the game. I wish I could recall them right now, but Celtic really peppered his goal. There was so many efforts.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But you worry because they could have held out,
But they didn't.
They didn't.
And that's a good
thing.
But
I think they were worn down in a way. I think Celtic just putting the pressure on them just finally told.
Yeah.
But you look at that winning goal.
Mm-hmm.
Steve Chalmers comes on the blind side of that defence. Steve Chalmers is a very intelligent player.
Yeah.
He's not been given the credit for that,
Do you know, I've heard that before. Out with scoring the most important goal in our history. I believe that he did come up for criticism at different times by fans.
Oh, aye. Yeah. Oh, aye. Yeah.
Unfairly so.
Well, he was criticised. Yeah, I remember a particular game, a Scottish Cup tie against Ferernc.
Mm-hmm.
Went to replay, and there was one time the ball came across, and he bit it and he put it right over the bar, in front of goal. But he proved us all wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
He proved his critics wrong, I should say, because I always liked Stevie. He gave everything he had for Celtic.
Mm-hmm.
He could never criticise him for that. He gave everything he had for a club.
Yeah, and I think that
I'd say to overcome your death.
Yeah, no,
as a youngster.
Illness.
You know what I mean?
I think that whole thing about Celtic fans will always appreciate a willing worker.
Oh, aye.
There's guys.
Yeah.
There's so many talented players that have come through the years at Celtic, and some not so talented. But fans will always accept and appreciate someone that gives their all.
They always did do. Yeah.
And I don't think that's ever changed. We can't, of course, not mention Tommy Gemmell. He's the man that drags us back into the equaliser.
Yes.
With, I suppose, a trademark Tommy Gemmell effort.
That was it.
What you've cheered a lot of Celtic goals over the years. What was it like when that went in?
Oh, relief. Sheer relief at first. Sheer relief because, as I said, I was getting worried. But when he scored that goal, thing was up.
Momentum's important in football. Did you feel at that point?
It's very important, yeah.
Did you feel at that point?
I felt far more confident, yeah.
Yeah.
And what is not often mentioned is that he should have got a penalty as well.
So I've not heard that.
Oh, yeah.
At
they were denied a penalty. Willie Wallace was denied a penalty. I've actually got a photograph of him, the goalkeeper pulling him down. He's got his arms around him.
And that's at 1 each or at 2-1?
I think it's at 1 each, yeah.
Right.
Sarti, aye.
I'll need to look back into that. But
yeah.
So you think it was a far comfier result in the 2-1 scoreline maybe reflected?
Yeah.
What about you say relief when Tommy Gemmell scores? I'm sure joy when Stevie scores the winner. What about on the final whistle? What's the feeling at that point?
I mean, I was just so pleased. I just really just sat down.
Yeah.
It just reflected. I know all sorts of people jumped onto the park and all that. They actually failed. I actually think the Portuguese authorities failed Celtic because they get into that dressing room. It was left unguarded.
Right.
And people were helping themselves to jerseys and things like that, you know. And they shouldn't be allowed on the park. They failed in their duty.
Yeah.
But some of those players, I mean, they were pulling shirts and all that off them and trying to get souvenirs. That should not have been allowed.
Yeah, I think Bobby Murdoch left the park with very little clothing on.
Yes, aye.
For example.
But it's not right. But you see, there's safety as well.
Yeah, of course.
Their first duty is the safety. But because the police chief in Lisbon had been boasting, we'll get everything under control, don't worry. And but they didn't do their job properly.
And we've obviously got the iconic image of Billy lifting the trophy.
What a image that is. Isn't that
outstanding.
Isn't that a first? It's a great image.
Yeah.
That to me it just looks wonderful, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Has there ever been a presentation like that? I think that must be most publicised ever presentation of a trophy.
It's incredible.
Isn't it?
It's incredible. And I think
even more than Bobby Moore.
Yeah. and rightly so.
No, but I mean, it's incredible, isn't it?
Of course.
How many times have you seen that photograph? How many publications have you seen that photograph in?
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
And there's so many.
And to think, I mean, his wife was worried about him.
Yeah.
Because he was exhausted coming off the pitch.
Well, it's one
and
thing.
he was going up those steps, he had to climb those steps. I mean, he could have fallen down on top of people, you know what I mean?
Absolutely exhausted. Was there a situation where, well, I think it's one of Billy McNeil's, it was one of his biggest regrets that, yes, iconic image, amazing image, but he couldn't have his teammates with him. In a way, it makes it all the more poignant, though. It's just him, the leader,
but there
man
wasn't the space, I don't think, for that. You know, they didn't usually have that there. Usually it was only the captain. And in the Portuguese Cup finals, usually, I think David Freer told me that they only had two players was the captain.
Right.
And,
because they still hold Portuguese Cup finals at the Estadio Nacional to
yes,
this day.
That's right.
And there's going to be some renovations there. But at the moment, it looks very like what it must have looked like for yourself in 67.
Yeah.
How close are you? I think you told me you're in that same stand where the presentation was.
Yes,
Could you get a clear image of?
I got a very clear image, yeah.
So there's the thing.
Yeah.
So myself and probably most, if not almost everybody listening or watching just now, we've seen the image, we've seen the photo, we've seen the reprints in newspapers. You've seen it with your very own eyes. You've seen Billy lifting the cup.
Yeah.
Again, can you talk through your emotion?
Oh, wonderful sight. Yeah, marvellous sight to see him. He just, as I say, he looks like a Greek god, doesn't he? Doesn't he look wonderful in it,
Brilliant.
Is that, I mean, a handsome guy and he's got this cup and that. And the guy was exhausted. Sheer exhaustion.
Just the most iconic image in Celtic history, isn't it?
We don't forget he had then had to go and they drive him round to the dressing room.
Mm-hmm.
They put him into a police car, for his own safety.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that you couldn't get to him. I mentioned your pal Jim Craig, and I say that jokingly because you've obviously spent a lot of time in Jim's company. You co-wrote his biography, Pride and Passion, with him, back in the day. I was going to ask, what insights into Lisbon did you gain from Jim through the process of writing his story?
Well, that kid did say, I mean, he just been talking about the final there, it just, I think the general thing that I got from was the players were so relieved at the end, that they'd done it. They were so happy to have done it, because, I mean, it's a dream come true in a way, isn't it? I mean, when you see that, when you get to final, and it's important that become the first British club to win it.
Mm-hmm. And the famous kind of tagline is that, it's 30 miles from Glasgow. Every player came within a 30-mile radius.
That's extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. Bobby Lennox the furthest away.
Is that not extraordinary?
It's unbelievable, and that'll never be repeated. You can see there's been so many phenomenal sides since then over the years, up into more recent times, but to do it with such a closely close-knit bond of players within such close proximity. That won't ever be repeated.
No.
Yeah. As I say, Jim Craig's giving you that insight, and it's such a special feeling all round. But you then, in the days after, you make your way back to Glasgow. Do you feel something like a returning hero yourself, coming back to tell your stories and share your memories with those back home?
Oh, I brought back some stuff. I actually bought a replica European Cup there, but what we didn't realise was they changed the thing with the cup. It was a new cup.
Yeah.
So, because I remember looking up and I said, that cup doesn't look like the one I bought in the streets of Lisbon, Mm-hmm. And a lot of people bought that thing, and it wasn't the same cup. The UEFA had changed it, and it had been well publicised, everything,
Yeah, you told me a story before coming on air, and you showed me a photograph. They designed a new European Cup for 1967. It was a jeweller in Bern, in Switzerland.
Stadelmann.
Yeah, and there's a great picture of a wee Swiss boy gazing into the shop window at this beautiful big trophy.
They put it on display for a week before Lisbon, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Billy McNeill was the first man to lift this brand new trophy.
That's right, yeah.
Amazing stuff.
And it's some weight on it, I should imagine, as well, eh?
Yeah, but for a big, strong guy like Billy that day.
I know, but it's a wonderful trophy.
Yeah. What's it like following Celtic back home then? You're the kings of Europe, champions of Europe. You're on your way to 9 in a row. Jock Stein's got the team playing phenomenal football. You've got Jinky and Bertie, Auld, and your favourite player, Bobby Murdoch. Tell me about some of those guys. Tell me about Bobby Murdoch, because so many folk that I know from that era, despite the various players I've mentioned there, Bobby was their favourite. Why was he such a favourite for Celtic fans?
Oh, I think, he was brought up through the ranks sort of thing, because they always enjoy a player that comes through the ranks. But you could see the power and the skill the guy had, Phenomenal player. I remember his first game for Celtic as a boy, And I thought there was something there. Mm-hmm. You could just see there was something in that boy,
Is that 1962 you mentioned it?
Yeah.
It's a hard question. Maybe there's no right answer, but who would you say was the most important player to that team? Was it Billy as the leader? Would it be somebody like Bobby as the driving force? Jinky as the maverick?
The great thing about that Celtic team was it was a team.
Mm.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone was any Stein regarded any player as more important than maybe in a technical sense, maybe perhaps, but everybody him was a team. He moulded that team. That's the most important thing Stein did, was he moulded them as a team.
All the more impressive.
And he gave them confidence.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah. All the more impressive, I was going to say, that it was pretty much the same team he inherited, give or take. I think Willie Wallace was added from Hearts, I believe.
Yeah.
But not much else. That was a team that
showed
took over.
Showed you much talent was there, didn't it?
Mm.
Yeah.
But it takes a special guy in the shape of Jock Stein to mould that talent. Your thoughts before we move on to a less enjoyable European Cup final? It's important to cover your next one in 1970, but your thoughts generally on Jock Stein and how he revolutionised Celtic?
Oh, transformed them, I think. He transformed the club, the whole club. Winners. He made that club into winners. They'd been very much second best to Rangers for years, and he changed all that. Yeah.
What was his biggest skill? Was it the psychology, the man management, his tactical know-how?
He had an awful lot of things. His psychology was a very important part of it, yeah. He knew how to handle the player. He knew how to get him,
Get the best
out of them. But I think he also instilled in him how you won games, how you won games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that was the most important thing. What you're going to end, he knew exactly what each player could do and what each player could contribute. But the most important thing he put into him was that you're playing as a team.
Yeah,
He would encourage individuality, but he would also make sure that individuality was part of to make the team, make it into a team.
Yeah, part of a bigger picture there.
Yeah,
perhaps.
Part of a bigger picture, yeah.
So as I say, Celtic are all of a sudden flying. As I say, maybe your earliest memories as a young boy and a teen, not so much fun, but then we kick into life, and then some under Jock Stein. We get to 1970. At that point, Celtic are lifting maybe their 5th league title in a row, give or take, on the way to 9 in a row. And we get to the final once again.
Yeah.
We go to play Feyenoord in the San Siro over Milan.
Yeah.
As opposed to 67, this time we're strong favourites.
Aye.
But it doesn't work out. But you're there again. Talk us through your experience.
Well, I'll start with the semi-final against Leeds, right? Now, I don't think that a person left Hampden Park that night without believing that Celtic would win that cup. We'd no doubts. The supporters was much to blame, I suppose, and somebody else not to blame, but you know what I mean? Because we all believed, we could see them getting beat. And that was the general thing of all the press over here as well, that they were there. But something went badly wrong there.
And what do you think that is? Because that one over Leeds, it was so heralded, one of Celtic's biggest ever results over 2 legs. Hampden was maybe as busy as it's ever been, one of the record attendances. 120,000, something like that. And this is Billy Bremner's Leeds, a very good side at the time. Don Revie, would he have been the manager?
Yeah, Don Revie was the manager, yeah.
And Celtic,
I don't forget, I mean, Celtic did it home and away, Yeah.
And cruise into the final.
Aye.
And at that point, as you say, like, it's not quite the right term, is it, to blame anybody, but you can understand why folks are feeling confident. So what did go wrong? There's no doubt it's a very decent Feyenoord side at that time. Wim Jansen, later to play a huge part in Celtic history, but Wim Jansen plays his part, and we eventually lose by the same scoreline. We lose 2-1. Tommy Gemmell again scores. He scores the opener. You think you're good to go, and we eventually lose into extra time, and it's a painful one for all in attendance. I've asked you about the joy and the elation of being in Lisbon. What were your feelings in the San Siro, and where do you think it went wrong?
Well, I mean, I can only say that it was a very disappointing performance. It really was. I mean, you have to say that Feyenoord thoroughly deserved to win it, thoroughly deserved it. In the end, I mean, Celtic, there's all sorts of theories about why they didn't. But I think it was basically the team selections. I mean, as I said, the players I've talked to believe that they should have kept the same team as played against Leeds. But he didn't, and Jim Bogan got an injury and he didn't take him off for a while, I mean, that to me was, Yeah, we spoke briefly on this, Pat, and Jim Brogan, by all accounts, very much yourself a smashing player in his own right, Jim Brogan, but
Exactly, very good player, but when anyone takes a knock, they should come off. George Conley, he's iconic in his own way as a Celtic player, he's got a very different story, but a very much heralded player for Celtic, and certainly at that time he was at the peak of his powers. Plays in the semi-final but doesn't play the final. Is it too simple to pinpoint that as the move?
It's just one of the theories, I think, because there's all sorts of stories going around, what went wrong with the players were thing with an agent or something like that to make money out of the final or something like that. That there's all sorts of stories like that, but and they didn't do the training wasn't satisfactory and all that kind of all sorts of theories,
And I mean, it's a talented Celtic lineup. There's 7 Lisbon Lions playing in that team, and a few other. Got Davy Hay plays in that team, a very young Davy Hay. You've got quality in the bench in the shape of George Conley. Jim Craig is on the bench, and a few others. But it wasn't to be, and it's that, as I say, the highs of Lisbon just a few years earlier, and then you've got this disappointment. But don't worry, Pat. You've only got 33 years to wait till your next European final in 2003. As I say, you're obviously one of very few people. I wonder just how many people have been at all 3. I don't know if we could ever find that out. But you make it to Seville, 2003. It's Martin O'Neill's team. A very, very good Celtic side under Martin O'Neill. We come up against an equally decent side in Porto, Jose Mourinho's Porto. And I get it's heartache, and it's an extra time defeat. But how does that Celtic side compare? So, some would say they're incomparable in terms of a modern side under O'Neill and the likes of Jock, Stein's all conquering Celtic sides of the 60s and 70s. But how would you compare them? What would you say were maybe some of the similarities and some of the maybe stark differences between the two sides?
Well, it's hard. It's hard to. I mean, it's hard to really judge. I think because there's good players in that 2003 team.
Mm-hmm.
I just think they just didn't do justice to themselves on the night, Yeah. And of course, I mean, they get Bobo get sent off, which didn't help,
No.
But as I say, as I've said to you, I think Henrik Larsson gave the best individual performance I've seen from a Celtic player.
Yeah, he was absolutely incredible.
He was unbelievable. I mean, those 2 goals, something else. He dragged that team back into contention.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
he's the one guy that you've said would potentially get a game with the Lions.
Yes.
Who drops out if he does?
Well, I'm just saying he was good enough to be it,
Yeah, talented enough to be a part of that group.
Yes.
Yeah, and it was, I suppose...
Because I'll tell you something, I remember I went to see the final when they played Arsenal, when he was playing for Barcelona.
Yeah.
And
Paris.
The Arsenal were down to 10 men and had taken the lead. And they brought him on, and I said to the guy next to me, I said, just you watch this. He won that final for him. He won that final for Barcelona. I didn't score the goals, but he laid them on, and he was the man responsible. He won them that final.
Absolutely. There's a very famous, I'm saying as a quote, you can actually see the video footage, I think, of Thierry Henry speaking after that game. And he said there's various superstars at Barcelona, Ronaldinho and others. And he says, but I didn't see any of them tonight. The man that changed that game was Henrik Larsson. And he was the guy that made the big difference. Despite that...
a fabulous player. Well, look at him. He was a fabulous player, wasn't he?
Absolutely.
I thought he was
incredible
a great
Celtic player.
Yeah.
And despite now being a Champions League winner, after that night, he still cites Seville as his biggest regret, the biggest pain point in his career.
Irritates him. Yeah. Mentioned
you mentioned there, Pat, that you kind of just dropped in that you were at a European Cup final beyond this. So you've obviously been to the 3 Celtic European finals, but you've been to various other finals and World Cups over the years. Is it just an overall Celtic are clearly your passion, Pat, but there's just a more general passion for football beyond that?
Yeah. Enjoy watching,
What would be some of the highlights? You've mentioned you've been to World Cups and other European finals.
Well, seeing Scotland coming out in Paris was fantastic.
In France '98, the opening game.
France '98 opening game. That was fantastic.
Yeah. Would you have been too young for the Real Madrid Eintracht Frankfurt at Hampden, those kind of games?
I was just a youngster then. Just watching the telly,
But you mentioned them being in...
My father got that. My father was at that game.
Yeah.
He got his ticket for Jock Stein.
For the Hampden final?
Yeah, my father worked in Queen Street Station.
And how does that
come
about?
And he knew Big Jock through that way,
Just blagged a ticket? Just dropped the manager?
Well, the thing was there was a queue for Hampden and he couldn't get away because of his work.
Right.
And Big Jock says, just leave it to me, and he got him a ticket.
Brilliant. And you've mentioned already your admiration for Puskas and Stefano. You've got Stefano down as the very best, haven't you?
Finest player I've ever seen, Yeah.
And on that though, Stefano himself has said that Jinky was one of the finest he ever seen.
Yeah. Well, see that film of Madrid, see Stefano's testimonial. What an exhibition that is. You can see it. Unbelievable, isn't it?
Is that just after Lisbon? Is it 1967,
it's after Lisbon, yeah. It's unbelievable.
We've spoke about
it. He's got this ball and he's dribbling him and it's marvellous.
Yeah.
He's magnificent. You could see the defenders are all... And you could see it, you could judge from the sound, the crowd, which the crowd is enjoying watching them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And the great thing is that footage is around. You can catch that kind of stuff on YouTube.
It's marvellous.
It's Bobby Lennox scores a goal and a 1-0 win. I'm sure Jinky sets it up.
And Jimpy, see what a fine pass that is inside there.
Brilliant, a great pass.
Jimmy wasn't associated with that. Jimmy was associated more with the dribbling, but the way he just slides that ball through beautifully.
Yeah.
For Bobby Lennox, huh?
I was just going to say as well, we've spoken about the iconic image of Billy holding the trophy, but there is an image of Jinky that night. He just holds the ball aloft on the final whistle. And that's, for me, that's the Jimmy Johnson image as well, you know, when you think of Jinky. So amazing stuff, amazing memories there, Pat. And there's so many Celtic stories individually that you and I could chat about over the years. And cup finals as Celtic go through the 70s into the 80s, centenary year, more recent times, dark times in the 90s, more success certainly in the last 20 years. But of course, you've chronicled a lot of them in your stories. So let's get to your writing career. Tell me first of all, Pat, how that came to be. Librarian to trade, that's your world. Yeah. How do you end up turning that into a writing career?
Well, it's, as I said, I'd always enjoyed Tom Campbell's book, Celtic 1945 to 1970. Which was so well written, a beautiful book, and I thoroughly loved it. And so I'd always wanted to speak to him about it, and he was in correspondence with Bob Cramsey, and one day Bob Cramsey got a letter from me. He knew I wanted to think with him, wanted to get in touch with him. And so Bob Cramsey gave me his address, and I sent him a letter, and he said, well, as it happens, I'm coming to Glasgow on such and such a day. It turned out to be the day of they played Real Sociedad, and so we met in the city centre and went to match, and then afterwards we discussed it, and then we said, well, why don't we write a book?
Did you have a connection instantly? Obviously, you've gone on to write some incredible Celtic books, but was there a fairly instant connection between yourself and Tom Campbell?
Aye, yeah. Yes, there was, aye.
So what was that first book that you and him worked on together?
The Glory and the Dream.
The Glory and the Dream. And that's, many have described that as the kind of seminal Celtic book of the time, just a real kind of landmark book as such. How did you find that as a process? Were you big on the research? Was that part of your side of things? How
the
did it work?
research was more my side, and he was a writer in that one, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And did you find great joy in digging into the archives? Is that one of your things?
Oh, I loved that, aye, yeah. And the good thing about that was that we did very well with that book because we got the Evening Times did a serialisation for about 4 days serialisations of the book, which helped an awful lot.
I bet, and also a sense of pride, I'm sure, in seeing your work out there to the general public.
Aye.
I think we've spoken, there's something along the lines of maybe 10 books that you've worked on altogether.
Like, yeah.
I've got a number kind of noted here. Pride and Passion is obviously the Jim Craig one that we spoke of.
Aye.
An Afternoon in Lisbon with Kevin McCara.
Aye. Kevin's, I mean, I enjoyed every one of writing with every one of those people. Mm-hmm. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Marvellous, yeah.
The
Kevin was, what a great loss Kevin has been,
Yeah, absolutely. Dreams and Songs to Sing we've mentioned. Your most recent book, is it We'll Always Have Lisbon?
We'll Always Have Lisbon, yeah.
A Celtic A to Z, the Bobby Evans book. I know you've kind of leaned towards not having a favourite there, but is there one that, I mean, maybe meant a wee bit more to you, whether it's Lisbon for being there, Bobby Evans for your dad, anything of that nature, any that really stood out for you?
No, I wouldn't make any distinction about it. No, I enjoyed them all, and I just, happy to do it.
Great.
And everybody, no problems at all. We've just gone with it. We knew exactly what we were doing, and
the world of Celtic. Again, you were giving me a bit of a kind of history on the writings on Celtic, because in the early days actually there wasn't a lot written at all. It wasn't until the 30s where Willie Maley brought out his book.
Yes, that's right, yeah.
That was one of the first books on Celtic, and then I think you said there was Charlie Tully's book, yes. And then Billy's and stuff. So not a lot of Celtic stuff to go around, but very much the opposite nowadays.
It's an absolute, isn't it?
What do you think of that? Celtic must be I know we're obviously heavily biased towards Celtic here, but they must be one of the most written about clubs in world history. There's so many stories and volumes out there on Celtic, isn't there?
Aye, tons of stuff now. Yes, an awful lot of books. Yeah.
Do you like some of the more modern stuff? We've spoken about Matt Corr that we know well.
Matt Corr writes very well.
Matthew Marr is
yeah.
a fella that we've had on the show. One of the newer Celtic writers.
Yeah.
Do you enjoy catching those stories yourself nowadays?
Aye, yeah. Read it. Yeah, read it. As I said, Matt Corr has done very well. This stuff. Yeah.
Why do you think, despite the rich history, the fairy tale story of Celtic's origins, why do you think it took a while for the writing to gather pace?
Well, who knows? I mean, what does surprise you when you think about it was the first book wasn't until Willie Bailey, and that was 1938, I think it was, wasn't it? And that's think how that's 50 odd years.
Yeah.
After the club was founded. Incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, so years 0 to 50 of Celtic, there's maybe one book.
Yeah.
Now, I think you've anticipated or guessed there's something between 300 and 400 books on
Something
Celtic.
like that. I suppose somebody told me that, yeah. They reckon that, yeah.
That's pretty incredible in itself. Out with your writing part, a very important part of your life has been your collections, your scrapbooks of sorts. You call them scrapbooks, and I almost feel like that isn't quite the right term. It almost kind of cheapens it, because they are a rich collection of Celtic memorabilia. We've got some in here in the studio today, and as I say, I'll share some pictures with folks. But how important has all those clippings and photographs and wee snippets of things, how important are they to you?
Oh, very important. I mean, the information on Celtic, that's the important thing. To get an awful lot of it's important that stuff was collected, and for future generations. And
as I said earlier on, you've gifted a lot of your stuff to Celtic itself. Are they on display at the moment at Celtic Park, or are they an archive?
They're in they're kept in Celtic Park, and it's you can apply to the Celtic Park to look at them,
Right, so if someone wanted to go along and look at it, is it mostly Lisbon stuff that's at Celtic Park?
It is Lisbon stuff, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So if someone maybe wanted to get in touch with the club, they could potentially go along and see your cuttings and your articles and your photos. And that in itself would be something, and I believe you've got a similar collection on record then at the Mitchell Library. And again, is that something people could get in touch with the library and go along and see?
You can just go along to the library, and yeah.
What kind of stuff is there at the Mitchell? Is that Lisbon again, or is it different stuff?
It's different stuff, It's got Lisbon stuff, and it's got other material, got magazines and things like that there in the Mitchell collection,
You were talking about a favourite place of yours in Paris.
Aye.
And I think it's a place where you spent quite a lot of time when you were out there for the '98 World Cup, but it was a place that on an almost daily basis you went and done some of your work. Tell us about this place in Paris and why it means a lot.
The Bibliothèque Nationale. Yeah. It's got the best collection of newspapers in Europe, I believe. And it's a fabulous place. Oh, marvellous. You can order the stuff in advance. It's there waiting for you. You just email them and tell them, could you keep these for me? And they'll do it.
Just email them, tell them Pat Wood sent you.
It's got a fantastic collection of stuff, from the whole continent of Europe. You think about that. Yeah.
Would you go there then and look at match reports from back in the day? Like, what kind of stuff would you go and enjoy?
That's what I did. That's what I did all my stuff in Lisbon. I used to order it up and go there and go to the thing where the French, you had the Italian, you had the Belgian, you had the Spanish, every country in Europe has coverage of the final in Lisbon,
And would you be scouring through them in the hope of unearthing some info that hadn't been revealed in the UK press?
Yeah. But one thing that did draw my attention was a guy was a Belgian journalist who was on his way to the final. He's actually motored to the final. Right? Yeah, and he said he was astonished by a number of hitchhikers going to the match. Remember the Celtic fans hitchhiking it to the match, which I didn't know. I didn't realise there were so many hitchhiked it.
Yeah.
You know, because we're so used to the thing when people going in the cars and all that and flying and all that. But he saw people hitchhiking it.
Yeah, and again, I've seen in your collection that's here today pictures of some of those hitchhikers. You know, at some point they're in France. You know, they kind of made their way across Europe, and bit by bit, they managed to make it to Lisbon. It's incredible commitment, isn't it? That's just something that seems to go hand in hand with Celtic. I mean, you've been watching Celtic home and abroad for well over half a century, Pat. But it's fairly common for Celtic fans to make that kind of commitment, isn't it?
Aye. Oh, yeah. Aye. A friend of mine, Tommy Collin, he hitchhiked it to Lisbon.
Why do you think that is? Because we will say that Celtic are more than a club and it's more than just a football team. So why do you think people will go on these... I mean, at the moment Celtic will play in all sorts of far-flung European destinations. You know, they were in Kazakhstan not that long ago. There's Celtic fans in Kazakhstan. Wherever Celtic find themselves on the globe, they went to Japan on a tour, Celtic fans in Japan. Why is it that Celtic just have this phenomenon around it of fans that will just go to the ends of the earth to watch them?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's incredible. Do you think about it? But I think it's people now get more money to go to these games now. You know, I mean, in the older days, I thought that people it was difficult to maybe scrape up the money to go, and and it was and all of them went to Lisbon in charter flights and buses, but enough of them went by car and hitchhikers. I said there's quite a few hitchhikers. So, I mean, I just think it's generally, and people are more excited. People are more used to foreign travel than they were in those days, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's just a Celtic thing. As I say, wherever Celtic are, there's no shortage of Celtic fans.
Yeah.
I know this is something you're not particularly comfortable with, if that's the right word, but in the year 2017, the club did recognise your contribution to Celtic. I think you were awarded with a special recognition award at the annual Player of the Year dance. And as I say, I know you're not comfy being in the spotlight as such, Pat, but was there a lot of pride in that as well? You know, this is a labour of love for you, I guess, across your whole lifetime, you know, collecting things about Celtic, writing about Celtic, following the club wherever they may be, big finals, all sorts of games across the years. Was there a lot of pride in the club itself recognising everything you'd done?
Well, on reflection, I suppose I should have been, but I just I feel uncomfortable with that kind of thing, you know. I'm not a great person for awards and things like that, you know. That's the way I put it, you know. Yeah,
but just, you know, these, as I say, the collections you've got, just that kind of blown me away today, some of the things I've seen, and that's just a very small piece of your collection. Is it just something that's kind of become, I don't know, it was fair to say your life's work? I don't know, maybe that's accurate or not, you can tell me, but is it just something that from a young age you thought, these are special times, I'm going to start doing this and see where it takes me?
No, it was nothing. I mean, it really only began, actually speaking, they only really began to collect stuff after Lisbon.
After Lisbon?
Yeah, because I did one of the things I did, I brought back newspapers from Lisbon and I cut them up and pasted them into the thing. And that was my first not scrap, you call it, whatever you want to call it. I did it, and it's in the Mitchell now. Yeah, my first one
the
is
very first.
in Mitchell. It's in the Mitchell collection.
Okay.
And it's that was the first one I did, you know.
With a bit of a laugh looking at a great picture, I think, from memory, the Celtic fan in question was called Jimmy McKinley. Fairly elderly fella at the time, but he'd been in Lisbon and he was travelling back the day after, and there's a picture of him holding up, is it Il Giorno?
Il Giorno,
the Italian newspaper of the day, with the team picture in the front. It's a really striking image of Jimmy himself holding the paper, but the image within the paper of the Celtic team is a particularly impressive image as well, and it's a great image amongst many others in your collection.
He was a demolition man.
Right.
Glasgow Corporation demolition boss or something like that,
Right.
Yeah. because what happened was that I think it was Jim Craig who was doing a column at Celtic View at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and he'd picked out this, and they didn't know the guy's name, but here one of his workmates wrote in a letter to Jim pointing out who he was and what he did was it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but
And Jimmy McKinley, yeah.
it's such a great shot,
It
isn't
looks
it?
like, he's bunny and all that.
Yeah,
It's great, innit?
it's a cracker.
And you see him coming back and, marvellous.
The smile on his face is incredible. I think that's what makes it. It's just it's so genuine. Pat, as we start to kind of come to the end of things in terms of today's recording, as I say, it's kind of been split into two, hasn't it? It's, the first half has been your early years as a Celtic fan, the huge influence of your dad James, your grandfather Patrick, your early years watching Celtic, the highs of Lisbon, the ups and downs of Milan in '70, Seville in 2003, and then your writing career, which is phenomenal in itself, as is your collection. I suppose I want to kind of close out by asking just what Celtic means to you. Everyone's got a different answer to this, and I've asked it in different ways to different people we've had in the show. But in short, if you can, how would you summarise Celtic Football Club and what it means to you?
Well, I don't go to games now, to be honest. I mean, perfectly frank with you now, because I don't think Scottish football is very competitive, and I find that's very sad to me, because I'd like to see a lot more Scottish players playing for the club, and I think it's kind of fading away, I mean, it's more and more we're buying players from abroad. Well, it's good players, obviously. I mean, you don't win things unless you're a good player, But I do just, to me, in a way, it's not the club that there was to me, I'm being perfectly frank about it. I'm not going to hide anything about it,
Of course.
I don't go to the games, right? So that's it.
And that's absolutely fine in terms of, I suppose, the modern game and how it is. Let's just take your life in Celtic, though.
Yeah.
From going there as a wee boy with your dad.
Yeah.
I suppose maybe peaking in Lisbon. I suppose obviously that's the pinnacle of Celtic, but around those times, your times watching Celtic in the 50s and 60s and 70s and even in the 80s. In the bigger picture, what does Celtic mean to you?
Oh, it's given me an awful lot of great memories. Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, it's wonderful. I mean, from the day my father took me to the game, and that I used to love game. And I used to go to away games. I remember the Shetterson Supporters Club. We used to meet in Hart Street, a wee hall in Hart Street. I used to go there along with my friend Tommy McGinn, who lived up the same close as me, and we used to go in the buses, and it was great, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was run by, he didn't run it himself, but it was a particularly fine man there who was involved in it. My guy called Matt Lydon, who did great things. We were never short of tickets for games, because he would do his utmost to get tickets and everything. And he looked after us. We were well looked after, I mean, it was great fun. I remember because we went up to Aberdeen, a game against Aberdeen. Celtic had been beaten by Rangers in midweek, and Pat Crowder did an argument with Sean Fallon in the dressing room, and he was dropped. And that was his last game for Celtic.
Okay.
And it was a day, and I think Tommy Gale might have made his debut that day at Aberdeen. I remember going up in the bus, and it was the worst winter Britain had seen since the ages, right? Since 1947, the worst winter. I'm not kidding you. It was a terrible, long winter. Games postponed. Football virtually wiped out for a couple of months in Britain. And on the way up to Aberdeen, and so that this guy started this record, North to Alaska. That's what it was like, going north to Alaska, and he won that day. John Hughes ran riot that day,
Going to Aberdeen in the height of summer can be cold. So I can just imagine.
Oh, but Aberdeen was a big journey in those days.
Yeah.
Oh, it was a big journey.
Yeah, not easy to make.
Oh, aye. This was the days before motorways.
Right.
So you'd have to go through Stirling, Perth and Dundee.
Mm-hmm.
You get there,
Yeah,
main streets and all that. You know, there was no motorways at all. But it was great fun. It was,
These young ones nowadays have got it easy.
Oh, I used to love going the buses, you know.
Yeah. I mean, aside from Lisbon's the obvious answer and the correct answer. But aside from Lisbon, Pat, what would you say would be the most enjoyable times you've had supporting Celtic? When would be the real moments that stand out?
Oh, well, there's so many memories, just memories of games. And, I remember in Real Madrid, I told you about Real Madrid playing at Celtic Park, and it was for Jewish charities in Glasgow in 1962.
Okay.
And seeing Stefano playing, and I just thought, greatest player I ever saw in my life.
Yeah. There was a story that Celtic tried to sign Stefano. I've spoke to you before.
They did try and sign him, yeah. That's genuine.
Yeah. So my pal Stephen Cushley, his dad was John Cushley.
That's right. That's right. He was a translator.
He was involved in the negotiations.
Right, yeah.
Did him and Stein or him and Fallon maybe fly out to try and
McGrory.
McGrory.
Jimmy McGrory, yeah.
To try and talk Stefano and to sign him for Celtic. That would have been a dream for you, eh?
Aye. Yeah, I'd love to have met the great man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you see that exhibition of football?
Yeah, exceptional. There's a quote I'm going to read out, Pat, and it might resonate with you and it might not, but it's from Willie Maley. We've spoken about Willie Maley, Celtic's first ever manager, wrote that book in 38, and just a huge part of Celtic history. And I guess in the recording today we've covered so many icons and heroes of Celtic, whether it's Jock, Stein or Billy McNeil, Bobby Murdoch, a hero of your own, Jinky, Henrik Larsson for for younger listeners and viewers. But Willie Maley, absolutely, one of the original Celtic icons. And there's a quote from Willie Maley that says, "My love for Celtic has been a craze. Without it, my existence would be empty indeed." Now, I know it's quite dramatic, and I know Willie Maley has had a life out with Celtic, but does that quote resonate with you in some ways?
Well, the resident, it did in the past, I mean, definitely did. I wouldn't say my whole life, but I definitely thought of little else, when for a long time I just, I couldn't wait to get to games and that sort of thing, so, yeah. Still something there, yeah.
For a time then in your life, Pat, was Celtic the be-all and end-all? Was it just a time when it was...
Yeah. I used to get very upset when you get beat, put you off your grub for days, you know what I mean? No, there was times when, you felt very emotional about things,
Yeah, I've no doubt. Pat, as we start to close out the recording, as I say, there's been so much included today, and thanks first and foremost for being so generous with your time. I would just ask if there's any kind of final thoughts and comments you'd like to make just as we start to close things out for the episode.
Yeah, well, I thoroughly enjoyed doing this morning. Yeah, it's been very good. Yeah, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Yeah. As I said, I'm just happy that if any of these, as I call them scrapbooks, are of help to people, and help to inspire them,
I think it absolutely does and will inspire. Inspired me today. As I say, I've been kind of blown away by your collection. Let's call them your collections rather than your scrapbook, but your collections have just been absolutely phenomenal, and it's great to hear that people can contact Celtic Park. I don't know if that would be John Paul, the supporter liaison officer, or someone else. I'll try and find out, and I'll put a link in the show notes, and likewise someone at the Mitchell Library that can connect people, because if you're a Celtic fan of any age, I think
the Mitchell Library, you just go into Mitchell
just turn
Library.
up.
Yeah, just turn up.
Again, just tell
fill
them.
Fill out a slip and they'll get them for you.
Tell them Pat sent you.
Yeah.
I think supporters of any age would do themselves a favour to have a look at some of the items in your collection. It's just a phenomenal collection all round. Finally, Pat, it's just a huge thanks again from me for being so kind with your time here
Thanks very much,
on the Celtic Exchange. And again, On behalf of so many Celtic fans, thanks for everything you do in ensuring that the Celtic story has been told and preserved over the years.
Yeah.
Great to see you today, Pat, and thanks again for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.